Hello, I'm Ryan Sipes, and welcome to the My Own Linux podcast. Today we're reviewing Arch Linux, and we're going to cover some of the strengths and weaknesses of the do-it-yourself distribution. I just wanted to start out by saying that going into this review, I was unsure whether or not it would be something I could get a clear grasp on within a week's time. And in this past week, I found that, in fact, yes, Arch is a distribution that you can pick up and use, even if you aren't a Linux expert, although having some Linux experience would certainly help. The distribution, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is a lightweight do-it-yourself distribution. It's got its own set of repositories and a vibrant community with a lot of documentation. So without any further ado, I'd like to show my setup. Now this is, of course, in VirtualBox. It's not my system that I'm running on right now. And I say, of course, because I was unsure whether or not I'd be able to get it to a point that I'd be able to actually use it for the podcast when I started. So I started in a VirtualBox. However, within about 2 hours of messing with Arch, I found that I was able to get it to a point that I was actually able to log in and with a graphical user interface, and I had my desktop environment all set up. So I'd like to go ahead and just log in now. And as you can see, if you haven't already figured it out, I installed GNOME 3.6. 3.8 is not officially in the repository yet. However, there were some instructions that I found online for setting up 3.8, but I was unsure if that would be a stable experience at this point. So instead, I just went ahead and installed the GNOME desktop from the repository. So once you get in here, once you get to this point, there's not a whole lot that separates Arch from other distributions running GNOME, other than right now it's very stock GNOME. I installed a different theme as well as made a few tweaks, and so as you can see, here are the custom icons. I'm just going to do a screen fetch to show what I have installed. As you can see, the host name of this machine is Archer. And as you can see, the theme I'm using is for the actual GTK is uncomplicated, and then the icon theme is Fans. Right now, it's this instance only has, 1,500 megabytes of RAM, so I didn't dedicate a lot to this machine, but being as Arch doesn't really need a lot because you can just install whatever you want on top of it. It makes it typically pretty lightweight. As you can see here, it says I've got 664 packages installed. So we'll go ahead and jump out of this, and I'll just show a little bit more of mine off, and then I'll talk some more about the actual setup process. As you can see, here's just more of how I've themed it. Once I created the user, it generated the basic documents, downloads, music, pictures, etc. And then one thing I'd like to show is everything is the bleeding edge. So whatever is available out there is what you're going to get. In this case, I have LibreOffice, the newest version, installed. And as you can see, 4.0.2.2. And I got that straight from the repository. Arch uses Pacman by default to install packages, and typically your command would look like this: insert package name here. And so everything's pretty easy to set up, pretty easy to install most packages. You might find yourself every once in a while going to the website and looking to see what the name of the package that you want is. For the packages that you can't install through Pacman, there's another way that you can build the packages that you want. So let's see here. Let's see if I have something that I've set up. So typically what you would do is you would download a package from from the repo. So I'm just going to go ahead and take us through that process. It's not, if you're looking for an experience where it's just set up and go, Arch probably isn't the distro for you. That's not to say that there aren't some distributions based off of Arch that you can just pick up and go with, but Arch itself, you have to be willing to do some legwork. So let me think of something that I would like to install. Let's look. We'll go ahead and I see Darktable here. I don't really know all that much about Darktable. But we'll go ahead and see if this will download for us. Regardless, typically you would go ahead and navigate to the folder that you would find the package. So in this thing we'll do this. And as you can see, it's got package build, and the rest of these files wouldn't typically be in there. This package has already been made, but you could do make package and it'll start putting it all together. This one's going to fail simply because I just don't have everything needed. Well, maybe not. Maybe it was another one I was thinking of. Well, there it goes. I guess I didn't need to pull anything off the website. But you can do this with most things that you can't just download via Pacman. And it's pretty simple. You just have to run that make package command. The inherent issue I found is that sometimes it just doesn't work. Something has changed. Maybe you don't have the library installed that it needs, and it takes time. It takes some legwork if you want to get everything working, because Arch, you're pretty much building it from scratch, and so you have to really work and learn about what is required for each of these packages that you're installing. See, and there it failed to build. And sometimes you can do I think it might be dash U. Maybe it's dash S. I think dash S is supposed to grab any of the dependencies that are missing. Uh, but like I said, there's you have to know what you're doing, and some of these packages that I've tried to install via this method haven't worked, and I would guess that's because I really don't have one of the dependencies that the package needs, and with this one, for instance, I really haven't just taken the time to look and make sure I have all the dependencies. I did spend some time with a couple packages like this and this one here, trying to make sure I had all the dependencies, but I would imagine that most of my problem came from a lack of knowledge uh, as far as what was required for the packages I was trying to install. Which brings me to one really cool thing about Arch. The the wikis are incredibly helpful in getting this set up. Was not very difficult if you followed the wiki. The right here on the front page, there's actually a link to the unofficial beginner's guide. There's also the official installation guide. The unofficial beginner's guide, though, is really simple, and if you follow it step by step, it can take less than an hour. I probably had everything set up in less than an hour, but by the time I actually had it to a point where I was using it for things other than just tweaking stuff, uh, that was probably about 2 hours. But it's not as bad as I was led to believe initially. People were talking about experiences where they spent a full day setting it up. I didn't really have that much of a problem. Actually, most of the problems that I ran into were due to the fact that I was installing it in VirtualBox, and so I needed some packages to make everything compatible. But had I not been, I doubt I would have spent even 2 hours getting things to a point where I was able to use it with relative ease. And and probably the last thing I did in those 2 hours was installed Chrome and LibreOffice and started using that. Another thing that I did was I installed a software manager, just because I've really gotten spoiled. When I first started using Linux, I didn't have a software manager, but now that I've been using it for quite some time, it's really, really helpful. I mean, there were software managers when I started using Linux, but I don't necessarily remember. I remember trying to install from source, and it was it was difficult. Now it's not as difficult because I've had practice, but you know, it's it's still nice to be able to go and graphically just select a package that you want to install and just have it happen. And so really that's once I got to a point where I went ahead and installed this software manager, and it was helpful. And so I touched briefly on the install process just a moment ago. I'd like to go ahead and talk about the wiki. You can set up your Arch installation however you want. It That's the good thing about Arch. I have seen in getting prepared for this all sorts of Arch setups that are really quite interesting. They've got, instead of using GNOME, they've got lighter weight, uh, LXDE, and uh, OpenBox. They've got other desktop environments that really give them the lightest experience possible. And in many cases, they look really elegant. But my point with that is that you can set up your Arch install however you want, because all you start out with is simply a command line, and you just have to start installing. And when you get to a point that you can actually start doing things, it feels really good because you've done all the work. But Arch's strengths are not so much just getting a blank install. That's not Arch's strength. All of Arch's strengths lie, I think, in the community and in the repositories. For instance, the wiki allowing me to set up my own custom installation within 2 hours is probably its best strength in my opinion. And that only comes from an active community. The install was not difficult, and it was a great learning experience. In just a short amount of time, I would say that I dramatically increased my Linux knowledge, and and that was a good feeling. And I got a good feeling of accomplishment from it. Uh, the I went ahead and actually posted on the Arch community on G Plus before I did this review and asked them some of their favorite things. And the resonating response that I got over and over and over again was Arch's community, Arch community. It was over and over and over. The wiki, Arch community, the repositories, Arch community, and the freedom. The one recurring one was freedom to do what you want with your operating system. And I thought that was very interesting. I thought because right now we're at a point in computing when the companies who are backing either Linux distributions or even proprietary operating systems are taking a lot of liberties. They're saying, this is what we're going to do, deal with it. And typically I wouldn't say that about some of our distributions, but I started thinking because one of them brought up Canonical, and in a lot of ways they have moved, I think, away from the community a little bit and towards, their goals. They've taken some things out of the public domain and they brought members of the community in, but not the community as a whole on some of these changes that they're making, and that's okay. I'm not saying there isn't a place for a distribution to do that, because Ubuntu, at the end of the day, is they're trying to make inroads for their distribution into the mainstream, into just the mainstream. They're just trying to make a place for themselves alongside other operating systems out there on the market. And it's a good time to do that, as Windows has taken a gamble with their Windows 8 operating system and their new user interface, and iOS is losing some ground to Android. It really is a good time to try and make this power play and to become one of the key players in the future. However, a lot of the Linux community, or at least a vocal part of the Linux community, has said, we aren't interested in being the mainstream. We just want say in how our system runs, what's on our system, and they want to be involved in the process of deciding that. And Arch not only allows that, but it takes it to the extreme. It just says, here's your canvas, go ahead and do whatever you want on it. And that is really enticing. Coming into this, I thought it would just be a review, but as I've used Arch, I've almost considered running it as my daily driver on a couple of my machines. And that, I didn't expect that to be the outcome. I expected I would enjoy it, but now I'm at a point where I'm thinking, yes, these Arch is doing something interesting. They've got a great community, and they bring something to the table that is exciting. And it it's almost funny because I really didn't imagine that to be the outcome. I thought, here's a lazy distro kind of. It's just like, all right, here's blank, do whatever you want with it. But when you look at the work that's gone into it, it's really great, and it's a really fun distribution. Uh, and so going forward, I'm really interested to see what they do in the future, and I'd really like to bring someone from that community on at some point to just talk about maybe what direction they're going, if we're going, what all we're going to see from Arch, as well as get a perspective from somebody who's active in that community on what they think someone coming into it should know and what they think you should check out. But I would say I would recommend to everyone to give it a try. Head over to archlinux.org and just read through the beginner's wiki, set up a system, and then just try it out. Because at the end of the day, you're going to at least learn something, if not have your new system, because it's really, really a good time. I told myself going into this I would try to keep it short and sweet, whereas the last time we went for about an hour or so and really didn't cover a lot. As a last little bit, I'd like to say that we'll be having another episode probably next weekend. I haven't yet decided whether or not we would review OpenSUSE, or if I'm going to have a person with limited, moderate Linux experience try living with Linux as their daily driver and get their perspective on that change. This person actually, I was thinking about having my wife do this. I've seen a lot of videos where people have had their grandparents, give Linux a try, and typically they set it down in front of them, or their parents, or insert family member here, and have them give it a try. I wanted to extend that, and I wanted to have my wife, who works for one of the large cell phone companies, and so she has plenty of experience with iOS, Android, etc. I wanted to see how she liked using. I'm debating right now between Ubuntu or one of the other distros, how she liked living in that environment and trying to accomplish tasks in it. And I wanted to kind of give her a list of tasks to try and complete and see what her thoughts were on that. So right now I'm in the air about whether or not to do an OpenSUSE review or that little fun project. So if anyone has any thoughts on what they would like to see, definitely go ahead and post in the comments on this video, or email me at ryan@myownlinux.com, or tweet at me at Ryan Lee Sipes on Twitter, or hit me up on G+, plus Ryan Sipes, and let me know. And so I guess we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.